made flesh. And it's your boy Icon with a Marvel animated TV review for you. And they put Jubilee back where she's supposed to go. When the music does the sparks are back, baby. And then I was just like, okay, I was like, great, they put Jubilee back. I can no longer complain about that. But then I was like, oh shit, y'all took out Storm. That's that bullshit. So like, we done lost the black people. So and then, well, shoot, at the end of the episode now, Bishop's probably gonna be taken out too. So we're losing, I don't know, like we're losing people, we're gaining people, whatever. But X-Men is back. Episode 3, Fire Made Flesh, and it's your boy Icon, and we're here. So anyway, now, in the last episode, Jean walked in on Jean's baby shower, and the Jean who had the baby was looking pissed. And when they did the test, like they took her downstairs, Beast did the test, and then he said that the woman that came in at the door, she was the one that actually had the correct DNA, the correct age and everything. She said, whereas like the Jean who just gave birth, her DNA and the timing of her age didn't match. And he said that the Jean that's been with us this whole time is a clone. So of course she was like, no, she was like, I'm your friend. I fought beside you, this, that, and the third. This is the imposter. And before they even said anything, before anything even got brought up, I immediately was like, yo, Sinister did that shit when they was on the island. Because Sinister's whole thing was he was obsessed with trying to create like the perfect like mutant child. And he felt that both Jean and Scott's DNA was the perfect DNA needed to create the perfect child to do whatever nefarious experiment. I mean, this was 20 years ago. I forgot what the hell he was even planning. But I just know that it had to do with Jean and Scott's DNA, and that's what his whole plan is. And I immediately thought about that shit, and then come to find out, that's exactly what happened. So, of course, like, Jean got offended because she was like, oh, why is everyone looking at me this way? So she takes her baby from Scott, which is his baby, too. She goes upstairs, and then while she's upstairs with the baby, Sinister's voice appeared on the baby intercom. And then he told her, he was just like, yes, my dear, you're a clone. I switched you out with Jean Grey so you and Scott can have the perfect child. And he's like, now, I'm coming for what's mine. And he also put like a jewel in her forehead that mind controlled her. Now, the crazy thing about him putting together the clone, Sinister has to be one hell of a scientist, because not only was he able to clone Jean, he was also able to duplicate her power, because just because you clone her using specific DNA doesn't mean she was going to end up with the telepathy. The fact that he ended up giving her the same power as well, that was crazy to me. But they said Sinister's so old, he was doing experiments on mutants back in the 1800s. So I was like, goddamn. So now, and then Magneto, he's like, you know, the time has come for Sinister to get these metal shards up his ass. So he was just like, you know, because then like when everything was going on, Rogue and Magneto, they came in late to the party. And when they came in late to the party, they were just like, oh, what's going on? We missed everything. I was like, yeah, because you was upstairs banging Magneto and you missed the whole party. So then now the clone Jean, we're calling her now, she ended up getting up, like she got upset. Like when Sinister talked to her, Sinister basically activated like her mind control. And then like due to her anger and her rage of being left behind, you know, like by the team, she transformed with rage, and she used her psychic power to basically, I guess, turn the mansion into a haunted house where she played off of the fears of every single person in the house so she can take the baby and escape with the baby. And of course, it was, you know, like Morph's whole thing was like going back to Sinister being under the mind control. Jubilee was actually there with the Spanish kid from the first episode. So the two of them are hanging out now. They're a thing. He started seeing things with his parents being like, oh, I cannot believe my child is a mutant. And then Remy LeBeau saw Rogue and Magneto getting it on and everything. And then it turned into like this whole big thing. And then Cable, along with Cyclops, they ended up like, you know, destroying everything. And then our Jean actually woke up, the actual Jean, the non-clone Jean. She woke up because she was on the table in a coma. She woke up out of her coma, and then she came in, and then she, like, you know, she stopped everything. And then that's when, like, clone Jean showed up, and then she had the baby, and then she was like, I'm taking off. So she dipped. So the Magneto took half the team to go, you know, to go after her and go after Sinister. And then the other half of the team stayed with our Jean, with, you know, with, like, Current Jean. While they were there, Kurt and Jean actually did wake up because she was like going crazy because she's just like all the voices. She's like, I hear all these voices. Now, Wolverine's whole thing was he was just like, oh, just focus on my voice, Jean. He's like, just focus on me. She's mentally and emotionally, psychically linked to Scott Summers and to her clone. So when she's talking about the voices, she's basically going through all the memories that the clone was having, and then, you know, also with her connection to Scott. So then when there was a moment where the clone Jean and Scott were actually fighting each other, our Jean felt that, and then she woke up, and then she was like, oh, I have to go save Scott. And then Beast was like, oh, you're in no condition to go save anybody. And then he was like, you know, your body is like exhausted. He was like, you know, your body won't be able to take the stress. And she was like, my body isn't what's going. And then she tapped into the mind power to fight her clone on the psychic plane. And then when she was going into her mind, looking at all the memories, she was just like, the clone even said, she said, yeah, she said, because we don't know when Sinister switched us, we don't know where my life started and your life ended. We don't know which one of us was the Phoenix, which one married Scott. She was like, you know, we know which one birthed the baby, but she was like, we don't know anything else because all of our memories now are like entangled together because, you know, like whatever, like one person feels, the other person feels this, that, and the third. But then she was just like, but then our Jean, she was just like, oh, but there's so much rage and so much hate. She said, but there have to be good times too. And then she tapped into the moment where Clone Jean actually gave birth to Nathan. And then when she tapped into that and she was just like, oh, you're my greatest love. And then like, you know, the mind control that she had over him disappeared. So our Jean, you know, like actual Jean ended up saving the clone. The clone and Scott together went upstairs to go bust Sinister's ass. And then after they whooped Sinister's ass, it was too late because Sinister, well, it wasn't too late, but they defeated Sinister. Sinister disappeared. But when they got the baby back, Sinister had put like some techno virus into the baby's system and like its skin started turning like greenish or whatever. And they were trying to get, you know, like get the plague off of him. And I remember the plague from, you know, like from the 90s. So it looked like the same plague. But then when they were there, they were just like, oh, you know, what do we do? Because the science to be able to cure this baby doesn't exist. So then that's when Clone Jean said, well, maybe the science exists in the future. So then she asked Bishop, she said, hey, can you go into the future and can you see if future technology or future medicine has the cure to save our child? And then Scott was like, no. He's like, I won't abandon. This is where Scott lost me. Because I'm like, Scott's an ass. Like, I didn't have a problem with Scott in this episode, but then he was just like, no, although my baby's dying of a plague that we don't understand and the cure for my child may be in the future, I'm not going to allow you to save my child's life in the future because he'll grow up knowing that I abandoned him and I'm not going to abandon my child the way my father abandoned me. And I'm like, what part of their saving your child do you not understand? I'm like, this is why you're an ass. This is why you're an ass. And then he was just like, oh, if you're sending my son to the future, I won't have any part of this. And then he stormed out like a bitch. So then he leaves, and then the clone ends up giving the baby to Bishop. Bishop took the baby to the future, and then she put, you know, like the memory into the baby's head, like mama and daddy love you, and then like blah, blah, blah. So then now Bishop gone, so now we done lost 2 black people. So I guess next week they'll take him out of the opening as well. So he disappears with the baby. And then the clone Jean ends up leaving the mansion. And then when she left the mansion, like actual Jean ran up on her. The two of them had a nice little conversation. And then, you know, she told her, she's like, well, be safe. And if you ever need me, I'll be here for you. And then she called her Jean. And she was like, no, what she said? Her name was like Maybelle or something, like Annabelle, like Maylene or something with an M. I forgot what her name was, but she came up with a new name. She came up with a new name very quickly. That's all I'm saying. Because she was just saying, because when she tried to leave, actual Jean was like, oh, you should stay because the mansion is your home too. And then she was like, no, because if you've been in my mind, you know I've been trying to leave this bitch for a while now. So she went off. So she's going to come back probably in the season finale. And that's when we find out, you know, what happened with the baby. And then Jean went upstairs, and now her and Scott have to have an awkward conversation because she's going to be like, bro, how you going to cheat on me with me and have a baby with me when I'm not around? So that's going to be awkward. And I said everybody else is just waiting in the wind for something else to happen. And then that's how that particular version of the episode ended. And then in the final scene, we go to Texas, good old Valley, Texas, where Aurora, I can't call her Storm now, Aurora, she's sitting in, and it's like, this is Storm. Like, you know, she's from the motherland. You know, she's an African queen or princess, whatever. Why? First of all, why is she in Texas? And second of all, why is she in some random Texas redneck bar? Like that, like that made no sense. So she's sitting at the bar, and then some guy shows up, and then he's just like, oh, I'm a friend of Charles Xavier, and I can help you get back the power that you lost. And I'm like, so this is obviously a trap. You know what I'm saying? And then, but her dumbass is going to take the big. And see, they're not getting rid of Storm completely because although they took her out of the intro where all the characters were, which pushed Jubilee back into the space that she was supposed to be in, when you go to the very end of the opening credits, she's still in there like flying through the air. And Charles Xavier as well, because he cameoed in the past in the episode as well. So Storm's about to fall for the okie doke. You know, Jean and Cyclops have to get to know each other, and they got some explaining to do. Nothing else pretty much happened outside of that except for their son going to the future. We did all this for nothing, and thank you for tuning it in. So this was quick, you know, and to be honest with you, the whole thing about Jean being a clone, this is something they could have saved for a season finale. So if you're going to tell us in episode 3 that Jean has been a clone this entire time since the 90s, since at some point in the 90s. What the hell do y'all have planned for the season finale? But share your questions, comments down below, and we'll continue to talk about it. Check out my other reviews for X-Men episodes 1 and 2 up on my channel, as well as my stuff with Gotham Geek Girl Nadia with the Paladins of Cosplay. Also, check out the ONG podcast as well, where we all talk about everything in between with anime, superheroes, and all this good comic book geek stuff. So that was it, guys. So thank you for tuning in. So till next week when we find out what the hell's going on with Jean and Cyclops, take care, and we're out this.